Well, good afternoon. I'm Dave Barton, the Executive Director with the National Alliance for Accessible Golf, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Anna Kittelson, the Manager of Adaptive Golf at the Golf Association of Philadelphia. Anna, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing good. Do you have some snow on the ground up there?
We do actually. We just had a quote unquote big snowstorm. So we got like an inch and a half.
Yeah, that's well,
So we're
it's
doing
kind of. I grew up in Kentucky, so that was kind of big for us back then. But they got a lot of ice and snow going on right now. But that's why I really like living in Charleston. So let's get to the good stuff here and talking about adaptive golf. And you're certainly a influencer in that community, so that's why we wanted to speak with you today. And as you've said before, and I talk about often, it is such an amazing community of golfers and the folks that support them, and it's just a growing community, and a lot of amazing things are happening. So talking about this at the start of the year, I think is just really good to refresh and get going again. So let's just kind of start at the beginning. Excuse me. Let's just start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, kind of where you came from and how'd you get into kind of playing golf?
Yeah, so I started playing golf around, I would say like 10, 11, 12-ish. My dad played a little bit. My grandpa was the one who really got me started, and I fell in love with it, mainly for the outfits, but then as the years went on for the love of the game, and I started to get pretty good. I played in college. I spent a year and a half at Midwestern State University, and then I finished my college career at University of Delaware. So I transferred halfway through my sophomore year, right before COVID, um, which was interesting all in itself. But yeah, so I played off. I ended up because of COVID playing a full 4 years at University of Delaware. I'm a super proud blue hen. I bleed the blue and yellow. But then that was kind of where I decided that I wanted to work in golf a little bit. I just loved the game so much, and I wasn't ready as I was my last year, my fifth year was coming to an end. I really wasn't ready to be done with golf. So I'm a big golf enthusiast, and I also love working with people with disabilities, and so that's kind of how I got here, and so I'll share a little bit more about that as we go.
Yeah, that's right. Which all the reasons why I called to bug you to ask if you could speak with us here at some point. So we appreciate it. So I was in the Navy, but I understand that you have an Air Force background in your family. So I guess you get to move around a little bit. But let's shift gears from golf just briefly and kind of talk about how life was kind of growing up as part of an Air Force family.
Yeah, so my dad served 22 years Air Force. Super proud of him for that. We did move a lot, but I wouldn't say we moved as much as we could have. So, I think I've moved maybe 8 or 9 times in my life, which I personally love. I enjoy the change. My mom did a really good job of making each move an experience something new for us. So every time we moved, we got to redesign our room, and we looked at it as like an opportunity to like kind of make yourself better. If you didn't, maybe if you didn't like something in the last state, like you're bound to find something good in the new state. So I personally like it. I find it hard now. I'm going on 2 years living in kind of the same area. I mean, I went from Delaware to Pennsylvania, which isn't a big shift, but so I'm about 6 years here now, and I'm like, okay, where's next? And I'm like, no, no, that's not how it works anymore. So
So
I
true.
really liked it. I think it helped me become more outgoing, and it challenged me in all the best ways. So people always like, did you hate it? No, I truly loved it.
Well, you get an opportunity, I think, too, in that environment, you're always having to, like you said, you get an opportunity to reinvent yourself if you want to, but you also have a chance to, you've got to be, it's good to be a little bit outgoing because you've got to meet new friends all the time and break into a new group of folks and that sort of stuff. And I think that serves most people well in life to have the ability to engage like that. So I'm sure that has been a good skill that you inherited, whether you knew you were inheriting it or not, right?
Yeah, no, it was, I mean, I think that's why I'm so good at putting myself in situations where maybe I'm by myself and I don't know anybody. It's really easy for me to make friends anywhere I go because I did have to do it a lot growing up. And it's not always the
Right.
easiest when you go into communities that are so tight-knit and they've grown up with each other, and then here comes a new girl. But I definitely think it's helped me in the long run. And so far in my career, it's helped me get to where I am, and I think it's gonna help me continue to like get where I can be. So I'm super grateful for it.
That's great. Well, so you've actually, certainly familiar, little familiar with your college career, just kind of looking you up and reading about you a little bit, but even back in those high school days and maybe even a little bit before, you were already kind of sampling with working in the adaptive community space per se. I think you did something with Special Olympics when you were younger, and maybe did some caregiving on the way up. So I'm curious about that a little bit, but also how that kind of shaped, what direction you thought you might want to go when you got to college.
Yeah, I've worked with people with disabilities for as long as I can remember. I started with Special Olympics, I think when I was like 10 or 11. And then in high school, I did this amazing program called PALS. Essentially, what it was is we were supposed to give so the special education program in Texas was referred to as the ALE program. And so our whole goal in PALS was to give the ALE program your typical high school experience. So I did high school in Texas, so we had the big mums. So like we made mums during homecoming week for the students. We took them to the rodeo and to different sporting events, and we got to spend most of their lunch periods with them, just like hanging out, doing Galentine stuff, and it was truly amazing. And so I think from there, I knew going into college that I wanted to do something working in that field. Maybe not necessarily education. Like for a while, I thought maybe medical, and then so then when I got to college, in my head, I was like, okay, I'm gonna be an occupational therapist. And so just when you play a college sport, you don't have the same amount of time as somebody who doesn't play a college sport. So I had to do a lot of odd jobs and jobs that didn't have like a set structure. So I couldn't work like a 9 to 5 or a evening job because sometimes practice was 4 to 6 and sometimes practice was 11 to 6. I don't know. So it kind of varied. So I was a babysitter and then I also was a caretaker, and I just so happened to start caretaking for a young adult with autism. And he's kind of the one who I give credit to for shaping my career now because when I was working with him as his caretaker, he knew that I played golf. And so his mom one day just was like, would you take him golfing? And in my head, I was like, oh, okay, like sure. Like I don't know why I never thought of it before. And because he didn't really like the outside, he didn't like the heat, and of course it's the middle of the summer. Wasn't the biggest fan of exercise, and so I was like, this is gonna be really interesting. But we went to like a local municipal golf course that allowed him to wear jeans and just was like super casual, and we had the best time. We were out there for almost 3 hours, I think. He hit like 4 buckets of balls, which was impressive all in itself because anybody knows that's a lot of golf
Mm.
balls to hit on your first outing. And he had a great time. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. I've just had the most magical day. And that's when I was like, okay, there has to be a career in golf and then also working with people with disabilities. So that's kind of how it progressed. It definitely did like a full, not really a 180, but a little bit of a 180 because then I was like, okay, I definitely don't want to do the medical field anymore. And it kind of has led me to like how I found Gap, and I kind of that was kind of my start into adaptive golf.
Excellent. That's very cool. About my only college accomplishment was getting in trouble at the fraternity house more than anything. But I think that's very cool that you played the competitive golf. So I guess I'll ask you a quick question about your competitive golf days in college. I mean, if you had to say kind of what's your best, fondest memory or experience, you can pick one thing. I'll give you two if you have to do two of
Okay,
that time.
I have to
College
do
golf.
two.
Okay.
I
As a
have to do
college
two because
golfer.
I feel like I have to do two at each school because I have two really cool stories. So in Midwestern State, which was my first school that I started at, one of my early career, like college career rounds, I was a sophomore, so I was going into my second year. One of our very first tournaments, I started off with a 4 putt, and I was like, oh no, today's gonna be a good day. And so, but then 2 holes later, I hole out for eagle. And I'm like, wow, this is a good day. Keep going. I hole out for eagle again.
Wow.
Couple holes later, I hole out for eagle again.
Holy cow.
So it's just the craziest day. So, I ended up, it was my first round that I ever shot under par. We don't need to talk about the in-between holes, but I started the day with a four putt and then had three eagles to kind of close the day. And it's one of the greatest memories that I have in college golf because when are you ever gonna have three eagles in a round? And not even just putts, like they were all hole outs, which is crazy. And there just happened to be a photographer on my third hole out too, so he's got the like a picture of me like hitting the shot, which was I don't know, it was just really special. It was a really cool moment and it I would say it kind of kickstarted like the success in my golf career too. It was that round was kind of the round that maybe it gave me a huge boost of confidence, which then allowed me to transfer from a D2 school to a D1 school. And so then probably my second most cherished memory of my college golf career is my very final round as a fifth year at the University of Delaware. Um, I was having a record-breaking season for myself. I was having the scoring average of 73. I was playing the best golf of my life, and it came down to the last day. Throughout my career, I had ups and downs, especially after I went to Delaware. I had lots of highs and lots of lows, but it was nice to end my senior year on a really high note. And on this last round, I just happened to play well enough, and my team played well enough where we were put in the final groups, and then I was also in the final pairing. So then when we came down 18, my coach walked with me the whole we hit our last shot to about 10 feet and then we made the birdie putt and my whole team was there, my grandparents were there. So it's just like a really truly special way to end the golf career. And afterwards they all gave me hugs and flowers. And it was just kind of a way to go out with a bang. Like I had one of my lowest scoring tournaments and just for all that to be on my last round is something that I'll never forget.
Those are two really, really cool stories. And what it tells me is that if we ever play golf together, clearly I'm going to be teeing off a tee box ahead of you. Okay. So I have a shot. So I have a shot at staying equal with you. But no, very cool. So not sure about this, but I believe are you still you obviously working full time, doing some amazing things. And are you still working on your education? Are you in a master's program still, or is that something you put on pause temporarily?
So, thanks to COVID, I got that fifth year of eligibility. So, I started the master's program while playing college golf and I did finish it. So, I just graduated in May of 2024 with my master's in public administration with a specialization in nonprofit management. So, um, it's kind of a it wasn't a hard decision to finish the master's program, but I'm glad I did it because I wouldn't have gone back to finish it because once you stop school, it's really hard to go back. So, I did finish it.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And I think, especially with where you're working now and in that particular background, certainly for you anyway, the sky is the limit. So it's going to be really interesting to watch where this your journey takes you in your career. So let's talk about that right now. Let's talk about the now a little bit, and maybe we'll talk about a little bit about the future here when we wrap things up down the road here. Obviously we know how you got into golf, and so you ended up at the Golf Association of Philadelphia, and I believe you also are a PJ Boatwright intern and had that experience. And so we have a mutual friend, Ty Riggin, an associate who's a great person in the game of golf and adaptive golf in general as well. So talk to me a little bit about your time at the Golf Association of Philadelphia, and then we'll see where that journey led you to some of the really cool stuff that you're leading now.
Yeah, I got really lucky, I think, in just the timing of things. I was a PJ Boatwright intern for the Golf Association of Philadelphia, and I kind of got that internship through, again, some connections where once I found out adaptive golf existed and it was a thing, I worked at a golf shop at the time along with my caretaking jobs and all the other random stuff that I did. And I told my head pro, I was like, hey, I think I want to work in adaptive golf. Do you know of anything? And that was the year that the USGA had initiated their first ever adaptive open. So it was the first US adaptive open. And he said, oh, that's so funny. Like the USGA just launched this. He's like, well, let me reach out to some contacts that I have at USGA and see if they're doing anything with their adaptive open, maybe some internships or something. And so I think he somehow ended up talking to my now boss, Mario Machi, about adaptive golf. And he was like, oh, I have this girl who works for me who's interested in adaptive golf. And then Mario was like, oh, I think the Golf Association of Philadelphia is interested in adaptive golf. So we set up a phone call. I did like a little interview, and then a month later, I was hired as a PJ Boatwright intern to specifically focus on adaptive golf. So, I was just really the right place at the right time with the right interest. So with the USGA launching their Adaptive Open, that was when the Golf Association of Philadelphia was like, okay, adaptive golf is something that we should start looking into. And so that's what I spent my internship doing. So I studied and I learned everything I could possibly know about adaptive golf. I think that's how we met. That's how I met a lot of the people who have influenced our program today. And I'm super grateful. And at the end of that internship, I presented everything that I learned, and Gap decided that they did want to launch an adaptive program, and they hired me on full time to spearhead that. So, it's been a really nice journey to get to where I am. So now I am officially the manager of adaptive golf, and we launched our first programming in April of 2024.
Yeah, that's very cool. And as we've talked numerous times about what you're doing there at Gap, and obviously you're setting an amazing example for other allied golf associations to kind of learn from what you've learned and take advantage of it. And because as we both know, kind of getting more of that activity across the country is how we get more golfers into the game. So, with Gap Adaptive, we'll talk about your first adaptive championship here in a little bit. But what sort of initiatives, are you looking at this year? I mean, again, what's excites you about 2025 as far as Gap Adaptive, and adaptive golf in general?
Yeah, so I am really excited for 2025 because we're expanding on a lot of the things that we did in 2024. So, our Gap Adaptive program in 2024, we hosted both a clinic series called No Limit Clinics, and then also our Gap Adaptive Championship. And one of the things that we looked at the end of the year was, okay, we have these clinic participants who are new to golf, and then we have these tournament participants who excel at the sport. What are we going to do for the people in between? How do we get those clinic participants either to maybe play a full round, or how do we get those in between people to be involved in Gap and kind of know that we exist? Maybe they're a little too advanced for our clinic programming, but not quite ready for the championship. So this year we are going to initiate some practice and play clinics, which I'm really excited about. So there are opportunities for individuals to hit balls on the range and then go play 3 holes. We're also going to have some other playing opportunities, which I'm really excited about for 2025. So hopefully those get released on our website soon. So it's just exciting to see, like, even we're a new program still. I mean, we're in our second year, but it's just exciting to see how much we're continuing to grow year after year. So that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited about the opportunity to work with adaptive golfers on all levels and not just on like the two ended spectrums.
Excellent. Well, we were certainly, a little bit of we were certainly appreciative of your willingness to kind of, try out some of our volunteer education that we provide, which we think is important. And actually, we love good feedback. And, you certainly weren't, prepared for this question, or nor was I prepared for the answer. But, we're always looking for ways to, improve what we do, because our focus is on delivering education in the golf industry. There's a lot of great organizations like your organization and others around the country running programs and running competitions. We are strictly a resource and education center, and hopefully in the near future we can work towards getting our grant program going again, so we can support programs again like we did in the past. And so, delivering good education to places where people can learn to play, or where people can compete, and help them understand what's important and how to be accessible is kind of our sweet spot. So, thank you for using that training. I mean, did your crew find it useful? Did they benefit from it? Is there things we can do better in that area, you think? I'm
Yeah,
an open.
we actually received so much positive feedback from your training. Um, and I think I went through the training myself, and I do think you guys have done a really incredible job of kind of like breaking it down into simple terms. Because as somebody who has worked with people with disabilities going through the training, I was like, oh, this should be so obvious. But
Mhm.
if you've never worked with an individual before, then it's not obvious. And there is a fine line between, because there are so many individuals out there that are inspiring and you want to tell them that. But in reality, they're just living their everyday life. And so I think your training put that so much into perspective to people. So that way, when we had over across the 2 days, we had over 100 volunteers come to our event, which was just overwhelming. And I'm so gracious for our community that like the tournament brought together. But we didn't have any I don't even remember a single comment where people were like, "Oh my gosh, these people are so inspiring," or there was no comments where I was like, "Oh, you shouldn't say that. Like they're just athletes." Like everybody was just so joyous to be there, and I think that was credited to your training where individuals came and they were like, "Okay, we want to watch these great athletes and accept them as athletes as they are, and not their disability." And I do credit a lot of that to your training. Um, so I'm super grateful, and it was funny because we did make that training a quote unquote requirement because there was no way for us to know who had actually completed the training. Which, if you're looking for feedback as an organization, that would
Yep.
be a wonderful thing if we could in the
Yep.
future find out who did it. Um, but we did have a lot of people be like, "We printed out the training, like that we like the certificate we got," and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome, but I don't need it." But like, thank you for doing the training.
No, that's very cool. Well, the good news is that's a great point. We've got a nice little learning management system now, a little platform, so we can absolutely give an organization the names of the people that have done it now.
Perfect.
So
Yeah,
yes,
that'll be really helpful, especially looking into 2025. But
yeah,
no, I do think the training was helpful, and I mean, it's always good reminders and everything because at the end of the day, they're people first, and what they are doing is incredible. But we want to take them for who they are, not for what they're doing.
absolutely. Well, we appreciate that. So as I touched on a moment ago, there's a lot of organizations in the adaptive golf space, and I mean, I've been here almost 3 years. It'll be 3 years in the spring, and I, and I've been in the golf business for a long time, and I was like just blown away, almost overwhelmed with trying to understand who is who in this adaptive golf community and who's doing what and who's doing these things. I understand the USGA and I understand Allied Golf Associations, and they've got, local, regional, state associations all over the country. And so, with the Gap and with Gap Adaptive, with what y'all are, certainly on a short list and a good list of those AGAs that are kind of leading the way and charting a path that other AGAs and other organizations around the country can benefit from with the work that you're doing and trial and error because, sometimes things work out great. Sometimes you go, well, we should do that a little bit differently. So, what do you think, related, obviously it's important that we, I think, look for ways to work together, but how are you kind of, reaching out or making sure that folks know that, your organization, besides being in Philadelphia, is really a resource, I think, for anyone. And I'm sure that's the way you think. So how are you kind of communicating that message out to organizations, whether they're part of the USGA or just a standalone organization?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna touch on two things that you said. We do have a wonderful website that our team worked really hard to create. Myself and a couple other staff members, Dan Schofield, Mary Machi, were super helpful in creating this Gap Adaptive website. And so on there, we do try to put a national calendar, similar to what you guys have and similar to what the USAGA has. So if people do find our website, it's not just our event, they can see other events. We also have a resources page on there where again we list other organizations, not just ourselves or anybody that's running adaptive programming, because you're right, there are so many out there and they shouldn't be as hard to find, but they are. And that's just like the nature of the internet because things get hidden. Like you have to have the right like search word to find like good programming. And so I'm so supportive of the entire community, and I always tell people if we grow, then you grow, then the whole game grows. We're not just here for Gap Adaptive to thrive, and though I want it to thrive, I want it to thrive on a national scale, and I would love for there to be gap adaptive programs everywhere. Like so I love for everyone to have their own adaptive programming as the sport grows, which I think it will. So we're definitely super supportive of all the other organizations hosting events. And um I think in adaptive golf, like we talk about, like we're an AGA, so we host your amateur golf tournaments. And so as an amateur, um I have tournaments in my state. I don't have to go 3 states over to play in an adapt in like a golf tournament. And so I think the same should be for an adaptive golfer. Like they shouldn't have to travel across state lines to be able to play in a golf tournament. So I think that's part of why we want to support other organizations is because it gets expensive, and if you can play locally, then you can play more. And the goal is for people to play more. So that's one of those things I would like how we support them is probably definitely through our website, and then we try to make connections. So if somebody reaches out to me and they live in Florida, I connect them with the Florida State Golf Association, or I feel I've sent a lot of people your way when they're getting into adaptive golf. I'm like, you gotta talk to Dave Barton, you've got to talk to Jonathan Snyder with the USAGA, and then I always tell them that you have to go visit the United States Disabled Golf Open down in Florida, run by
Yep,
John and
Jason.
Jason. I always tell everybody to go check out their tournament.
Your phone's probably gonna be ringing for me in the not too distant future because we've relaunched. We're about to relaunch our again a publicly available facilities database, but we're branching out a little bit. It's going to be certainly facilities and programs and adaptive golf car locations. We really want people to say, do we have adaptive vehicles or not? And it's, information is only as good as that people put in there. And and folks that have the information, whether it's programs or facilities, the burden's really on them to keep their information updated because our phone rings all the time. I suspect yours does as well. And hey, does that golf course have an adaptive car? Better to know they don't have one and are working on it, or they do have one. Sure, it's important to know if they've got two, three, or four, what types they may be, but it's most important simply to know, do they have one? And if they know they've got one, then the golfer can reach out to the golf course and engage, and it not be a complete mystery as far as what's going on. Because a little bit of a heads up goes a long way, especially for individuals who might need a little bit more access considerations, to play
Yeah.
the game. And showing up cold is certainly something people can do, but I rarely show up cold to a golf course. I want to know what's going on with that golf course before I show up. Are we car path only today? Are we off the all these little things like that? So we're working on relaunching that, and that'll be certainly available. And we'll be hopefully working with a lot of the AGAs to get some of their information put in there. Because again, when they have tournaments, we hope that information will be useful to say, hey, where are the carts around this area that we might be able to borrow and use and kind of work together. But
Yeah.
so good stuff there. So just a couple more questions here, and I'm going to let you go because I know you've got a lot to do up there. With got to shovel an inch and a half of snow out of the driveway or whatever it may be. But so I've only got like really three more questions here, and so um, you've had your first adaptive golf championship, so you got your second one coming up in 2025. So, what are you looking forward to most for the next event, right? We always learn something at previous events. We all, and so what are you looking forward to at the next event? Because we always, as people that run golf tournaments, which I've done my fair share of as a golf pro, we always want that next event to be better than the last one, right? And so,
Yeah.
and these events are always very exciting, as you know, because it's just the support that these tournaments get from the competitors, their families, friends, and just the financial supporters is amazing. So, how do you make it better? What do you want to do next year that you maybe didn't do this year, or you want to do a little bit differently?
Yeah, so I am super excited for 2025 because we have a lovely, what I'm gonna call like a stay and play location. So if you weren't aware, the 2024 Gap Adaptive Championship was hosted at two golf courses, which I think was maybe a first for adaptive golf. Don't quote me on that, but I think it might have been a first where you came and you played two golf courses, and it was fun. It was an experiment. We wanted to get people on two really nice golf courses in the area of Pennsylvania, and that's just how it worked out. Where this year, we're going to be at the same location, and we're going to be able to give individuals a little bit more access to that golf course than because we had the two. And over the weekend, yeah, I'm just gonna stop the comments there. But yeah, so I'm excited. So we're gonna have like a larger practice around event where everybody's gonna be able to play practice round the day before. We're gonna get the club members involved. Have a super little fun like community outing afterwards. And then you'll stay right nearby and be able to play the same course for the next 2 days. So I think that's the biggest thing. From the logistical standpoint, it's gonna make our lives a little bit easier. One course, we can bring all of our equipment. It can stay there for the week, and but yeah, so I'm excited. I'm also excited to see maybe people come back and see how they've improved or how they've worked on their golf game. I know that since our tournament, I've received a couple messages saying like, "Oh, your tournament inspired me to practice more. Oh, your tournament, can't wait to see how much better I do next year." So I will be excited for the community to come back and maybe show us how they've improved. And just like, I don't know, it'll be exciting to see the same people again.
Well, I think it's great, and I know it will be amazing, and I'm sure your phone, if it's not already, is going to be ringing off the hook for courses up in your area that want to be host facilities for this, because if they're paying attention, they're seeing what's going on. So only two more questions, and not loaded, pretty you know just some things I like to kind of see what people's thoughts are, and we all have different answers to this sort of stuff. So you touched on a little bit of this stuff throughout the conversation today, but I guess your phone rings. People are looking on where to play golf. How do I learn to play golf? Where do I go? So I guess what's that little bit of initial advice that you would give to somebody, whether they're a golfer themselves or maybe they're a parent of a child who has a disability that doesn't even know that golf is possible to them at this point. So what do you like to tell people that ask you that kind of question? Where do I get started? Obviously they can call you, but how do they get started? And because getting started sometimes is the hardest part, and it should not be hard. And so
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
I think besides calling myself and coming to one of our no limit clinics or maybe another clinic that is nearby, I know there's a couple other states that run them. Um, but I think golf professionals and maybe the industry of golf is so much more intimidating than it actually is. So I know in just our training of PJ professionals to help out with our clinics, we have yet to meet somebody who's not excited or intrigued by the idea or that isn't willing to like want to help adaptive golfers like get into the game. So I think my best piece of advice would really just be to like find the golf course that's closest to you and just go into the pro shop and just say, "Hi, I'm so and so, like my son and daughter has this, and we want to look to get him started." And I can probably almost guarantee like if there's not a maybe a PJ professional in the shop, maybe it's just a shop worker, even the shop worker is gonna be excited to help you get started. And from that, like maybe you'll get some free stuff, maybe get some free lessons, I don't know.
Right.
Um, but they're definitely going to be willing to help you get into the game any way you can, and maybe you need some adaptive equipment. Ping has done a phenomenal job. Brian Rourke over there, will get you whatever you need to start playing. So like if that is something that maybe is stopping you, you could always start with him. And if you reach out to him and say, "Hey, I'm worried about starting because I don't think this equipment is gonna be right for me," he'll do anything in his power to get you out there. But I really think it just takes like getting over that edge and just going to your local shop and just saying, "Hey, I want to play. How can I get started?" Because in my experience, I haven't met anybody who's not enthusiastic about the idea and about the possibility. And then even from there, maybe that can lead to more like there's so many small connections out there. So like you could go into your shop and they could say, "Oh my gosh, I know so and so who also plays with one arm. Like let me connect you two." So it just is taking that little leap of faith and maybe getting out of your comfort zone and just like addressing to somebody that you want to play. But it's not as intimidating as people think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. A really good informative answer there. All right, so here's your final question. It's not pass or fail. You've already passed the test, so you don't know where it's at, all right? But no, you've done. It's been great talking with you today, and I think too, even though what's the best way to say this? No one can see us, but I have a little more time on this earth than you do. I guess is one way to say that. Okay,
Hmm.
and so it's really impressive what you have accomplished up to this point in your career, and you're just on the front end of what's going to be an amazing career wherever the journey takes you. I'm quite sure that But so whether you want to be or not, you're kind of an influencer. You got people looking at what you're doing, and which is a very cool thing. And so, how would you advise someone who might be interested in getting in the golf business, or just supporting adaptive golf? Maybe they're not interested in playing. Obviously we talked a lot about volunteers. Volunteering is a great way to get informed at the beginning. But what would be your kind of Anna's advice for how to get started? Because obviously you found a passion here, and it's not for everybody. It's not. Everything is not for everybody, right? But so
Yeah.
you love what you do. I love what I do. So how would you advise someone that's interested in this kind of space? What should they think about doing?
Uh, so the one thing at Gap that I'm super proud of, that I advise everybody to do is our adaptive golf program is adaptive golfers focused. And so the biggest thing that I did during my internship and I'm still doing is I'm making sure that the adaptive golfers are heard because at the end of the day, our programming is for them. And so I want our program to be how they would envision it. So when I first started out, huge thanks and all the credit in the world to John Bell and Jason Faircloth over at USDGA for I went to their tournament. I learned they answered a million questions that I had. They helped introduce me to so many people in the adaptive golf industry, which then even at Gap allowed us to create what we call now our adaptive golf committee. So we have local adaptive golfers in the area on this committee. So again, we can ask them questions and we can say like, "Hey, what would you like to see in the area? Like, how can we help your game? How would you have liked to seen it when you were just getting started into golf?" Because a lot of them now are really good golfers. So that would be my biggest piece of advice is that there are adaptive golfers all over the country and they're all willing to help and they want these to see these programs grow and thrive. So my biggest piece of advice is just to if you're wanting to get into adaptive golfers are the place to start. So whether that's like a previous established golf adaptive golf organization, like I'm lucky here where in Pennsylvania we have the Eastern Amputee Golf Association. So I've gotten to speak a lot with Bob Buck, who again was super helpful in the development of our program. And then just through like Instagram and the US Adaptive Open, I've really made sure to speak to adaptive golfers. So, like when you do come to the Gap Adaptive Championship, they feel listened, they feel heard, and they know that our tournament is not for us, that it's for them. And so that is my biggest piece, I think, of advice, especially if you're looking into adaptive golf programming, is to just reach out to an adaptive golfer, whether on Instagram, on Facebook, or through email. And just make sure that you're adaptive player focused would be my biggest piece of advice. If you're interested in golf and maybe not just adaptive golf, let me be the example that there are so many different outlets in the golf world. I'm sure so many people didn't even know adaptive golf existed. I didn't 3 years ago, and now here I am. So there's so many different avenues in golf, that if you're just interested in the sport or any little small aspect of the sport, there's so many different career choices at you. But again, you just have to ask. So just finding somebody and not being afraid to ask is probably my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah, well, that's really, really good sound advice, Anna, and I know that it's going to be well received by anybody that hears it. So, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I know it was a little bit short notice, but I learned a lot about you. I learned a
Oh,
lot
thank you.
more about the Gap and Gap Adaptive, and so I always like to learn things as well. So we're gonna wish you the best of continued luck with what you're doing with the Gap and Gap Adaptive, and in this space in general. And obviously, we'll be staying connected in some areas across the country and some efforts, I'm sure, as we work together, because it is a great, big, amazing community. And I think your advice is just so good because it's simpler than people think. To kind of get involved, you just got to kind of ask the question. You just got to kind of show up because this community doesn't say no to people who want to participate and help. So, any other parting words? If not, we'll call it a day, and we'll look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Yeah, my parting words is there's an adaptive tournament near you, go watch. Go
That's great
support,
advice.
go meet the community. They're my favorite people. They'll probably become yours too. So
Sounds
thanks so
great.
much for having me.
Yeah, we'll talk to you again soon. Take care.